Hello, everybody. Mr. Foley here, and welcome to Economics. This is a class where we really look at how do we use the resources on a local level, state level, national, and worldwide level to get what we need, and what impact does it have when we decide to use a resource for one thing instead of another. And so that's what's at the core of this class. You can say economics, you can say economics. I really don't care because I'll use both. In the end, it's all about understanding how do we use resources and what does that mean for the world around us. So this intro unit is going to give you a little bit of the background information you need. As you watch this, you can use your notes as well. Open your notes up. They'll be in Google Classroom if you need an electronic version. And, fill in as we go along because you'll be referencing those later when we study for tests, when we're working on worksheets and different things like that. So here is our introduction unit. Let's go. All right. So economics is the study of how individuals, businesses, and society use limited resources when they have unlimited wants. The reality is we always want more. You give me a Snickers, I want two, right? But there is limited resources, and that might be my money to buy that. That might be the number of candy bars that are available. And so when we study economics, we're looking at how do we use these things as individuals, as businesses, as a whole society. When we have so many wants, how do we decide what we're going to make? You could also say it's the study of how humans use resources to meet their needs and wants. All right. So anything you see in yellow, most likely you're going to have to fill in for your notes. And as we go along, if you want to stop and write that in or type it in as we go, that's totally fine. Then you can continue the video. So looking at a few things here. And my apologies, it seems like my screen's a little mixed up. Okay, fix that. So looking at a few things. I-94, all right? If you think about I-94, we have a lot of resources we needed to make that highway. And we had to decide that this is a need. And so we're going to put a lot of resources to it. And there's a lot of thought that went into, do we make it a 2-lane? Do we make it a 4-lane? And in fact, we had whole areas that kind of were destroyed to put the highway in. Rondo in the Twin Cities was historically an African-American neighborhood, and that kind of got cut right in half because of the highway. And so we have to look at how we're using these resources and what are we giving up as a result of getting what we need sometimes. Next one, cell phone waste, right? We have this unlimited desire for new cell phones. But what does that mean for the waste of resources that we have? Because there's tremendous waste with cell phones. So these are things to think about as we go forward. All right, the economy. You hear about the economy all the time. Well, the economy is the production and distribution of goods and services in a society. So how do we get what we need where we need it, right? In the morning, I'm gonna have a banana. That banana is not from the United States. So who produced it and how did we distribute it so that it got to me in Wisconsin where you'd never be able to grow bananas? It's pretty spectacular when you think about it. So that's what we really look at. How do we produce and how do we distribute the goods or services that a society needs? So if you think about it, our major players in Ellsworth's economy, who are our big producers in Ellsworth's economy that produce a lot of goods or services? Well, obviously, you probably think about the Creamery. They're a big one. Quality One over by the Ford dealership is a supplier to Menards of cabinets and things like that. You got your car dealerships. They're obviously big time players in the economy as well. Some of our restaurants, our grocery store, they're big for our economy in terms of producing or distributing goods. Our farms are extremely important for our economy. So all these different things. But not all areas have the same goods and services that they're big with. If you think about California, California is huge with dairy, just like Wisconsin is. They say they have happy cows. They don't. Don't believe it. But they're big with dairy too. But they're also really big with technology. And you have Amazon and Apple and a lot of other companies are going to have a big pull in California. And so their economy is a little different than ours, not only because they have technology, but also because of climate. They have a lot of tomatoes and vegetables that they grow that we just can't grow here in large quantities because we don't have the same growing season. So each place is going to have a different economy, production and distribution of goods, depending on what they are. Resources. A resource is anything used to make something else. and they are very limited. If you think about a bicycle, okay, what are some natural resources we need to make that bike right there? Think it through. All right, so we got metal, we've got rubber, we have leather, possibly, we have some plastic on there, all these different things, right? And you could go through all different types of things, right? And so resources are limited, and usually we use them to make something else. So scarcity, this is the tricky part. This is a reality that we don't have enough money, time, or resources to get everything that we want. Every person, company, and government must balance its wants and its needs. It doesn't matter who you are. You can't have it all. I know it's sad, but it's true. Okay, so you have $1,000. Do you want to use that to buy a new phone, to save for a car, save for college, buy something else? You can't have them all. $1,000 is not going to get you a phone, a car, and save for college. So you have to pick one. That's because we have scarcity. We can't get everything we want. So city has some money, tax money. Are they going to fix roads, build a youth center, or renovate a library? Again, they can't do all of it, so they have to choose one. Big choice. And when you look at different people, okay, think about a teenager versus Patrick Mahomes. And I think at Patrick Mahomes, like you think, yeah, he's got everything he wants. Well, does he? Okay. If you think about the money aspect of it, let's see if I can get fancy here with some of my annotating things. Here we go. Okay. A teenager probably lacks money, right? They'd love some money, but they might not have enough. Okay. And then you go over to time. Okay. Now, depending on the teenager, they may have lots of it or little. A lot or a little. Some teenagers are bored because they have so much free time. Others don't feel like they have enough. Okay. Resources, they may be lacking or they may be plentiful depending on the teenager. And so we see a lot of different variety there. Now, everybody's going to look next at the Patrick Mahomes and they're going to say, well, he's obviously got the money. He makes more in a year than I'll make in my lifetime, right? The time, that's a tricky one. When he's retired, he might have a ton of time at the age of like 40, right? But it's limited right now. He's got to spend so much time practicing, so much time preparing. If he wants to do the best, he doesn't have a whole lot of a choice there. Okay, how about resources? Lots. And so it's really easy to say, well, that person's rich. They got everything they want. Well, they may be rich, but that doesn't mean they have everything they want. Patrick Mahomes, I guarantee you, would love to have more time with important people in his life. He would love to have more time probably for charities and things like that, but he can only be in one spot at a time. So scarcity is reality that we don't have enough money, time, and resources to get everything we want. And it's just something to realize about life. Not real fun, but so what we have to do is we have to make trade-offs. Okay. And let me get rid of my text here. Hold on a second. Okay, let's clear my ink, clear all my drawings. Good. So scarcity is, what are you going to give up in order to purchase or produce another good? So for the government, they have to decide, are we going to put money towards defense or education? I know Lyndon B. Johnson, when he was president, we were involved in the Vietnam War, but he had this plan for the Great Society, and he wanted to put all this money towards ending poverty. But then we're sending tens, hundreds of thousands of troops to Vietnam, and all of a sudden that money went to the war. And so the trade-off for fighting in the war was we weren't able to have our fight against poverty, against poor situations for people, which is too bad. A business has a trade-off. Do they buy a machine that's going to produce something pretty well, or do they hire a part-time worker? Might not be able to have both. Personal trade-offs, we see it all the time. Do you go on a vacation or do you save that for a college fund for your kid? So it's a sacrifice you have to make, and it can be hard. It's not always fun, to say the least. So what we really see with trade-offs is opportunity cost. And this is the option you give up when you purchase a good, or it could be a service too. Okay, so you're gonna have two things. Gain is the option you choose, and the opportunity cost is what you give up. So, like we said before, You got $1,000. Are you going to buy a new phone and some headphones, or are you going to save it for a car? Now at 16 years old, it might be a little easy, or 15. Yeah, maybe you want that car, but maybe you're 18, you already have the car. So maybe you're looking at the phone, but whichever one you choose, the other one's your opportunity cost. If I choose the new car, well, then I'm sorry, if I choose a new phone and headphones, then I'm giving up the car. So it's all about decisions and what you want to do. Second one, do you want to get a job in high school, or you want to play high school sport? Maybe you don't have time for both. You have to decide. For myself, I chose to get a job because I love to work. So my gain was some money and experience and a job, and my opportunity cost was high school sport, and I was okay with that. Others, they love sports. They're going to choose a sport, and they're giving up having some job experience and some money. That's okay. Everybody's different in what they want to do. So we will be looking at this. Let me pull myself up here a little bit. There we go. We're going to look at the border wall debate in Texas and look at what do we see with opportunity cost for that. But that'll come later. So some of the terms you're going to see in economics. The first one is market, and that is the free exchange of goods and services between buyers and sellers. So how does that happen? Well, it can happen in a lot of ways. Our normal market economy is where you go to stores and buy things and give them money, and they use that to buy things from other people, right? You could have a farmer's market, right? Where farmers bring their food directly into the city and then you buy it. There's a free exchange of goods or services, whatever it might be. Or you may have eBay. I used eBay a ton when I was in high school to buy and sell different things, where a person can put their own things online and somebody else can purchase it. So markets can look very different in different places. The Mall of America fits as a market. Uh, a food truck, food trucks can fit in within a market system. You could have you going to trade with your friends. The 100-mile garage sale is a market of its own. Wherever you see a free exchange of goods and services, that's market. Macroeconomics. So we're going to take a real slim pick into macro and microeconomics. And so that'll come a little later, but I'll give you an idea of the terms. So macroeconomics is economic theory focusing on the economy as a whole. We look at this big picture from way far back of how are decisions made by large units such as the government of the world and countries, and how does that help us understand how everything works. And so we'll look at things like inflation and unemployment and income within countries to figure out how that operates. We'll look at what role does the government play in comparison to corporations and big companies and you and I in our households. That'll be macroeconomics, really looking at the big scale of everything. Now, the other side of that is microeconomics. And this is where you focus on the behavior and decision-making of individuals and firms or companies. So this is a smaller picture. Macro looks at the whole United States possibly, and micro may look at the shoe industry and specific shoe companies. And how do people respond to the decisions they make when buying shoes? And how does the company respond? And so we'll look at things like supply and demand and how does price impact what you want to buy. We'll talk about things like labor markets or decisions within a family and price determinants, all those kind of things. So we look at the big part with macro and the small part with micro. Economic models. These are created to simplify and problem solve situations in the world. And when you use these, you can gather data and find solutions. And so we don't get into this a lot, but you would if you go into a higher level economics class. So an economic model, okay? Here's something to think about. Imagine that nationwide, the minimum wage increases to $15 per hour. What impact will this have on unemployment? Okay, so you can think about that for a second. And so, an economic model would try to simulate what's going on here. Okay, so maybe they'd use a simulation where they work with computers and they look at the mathematical formulas that fit everywhere, right? So, mathematical model systems of simultaneous equations with an equal number or greater number of economic variables. You have all these different ways that you can look at this to try to figure out what it would do as a nation. So there you go. Economic models are used a lot. Again, we don't go into it too much, but it's good to know about. So lastly, for this intro unit is inputs, outputs, and productivity. How do we get the goods that we do need? So first off, we have inputs, which are known as factors of production. These are the resources used to create goods and services. Okay, and there's going to be a variety of different ones. But if you think about a normal good like a pencil, right? You have the lead, you have the wood, you have the metal, you have the paint, but you also have other things. You have the machines that were used to create it, the factory it was created in, the land that was needed to grow the timber, the people that actually made the pencils. So all these different factors to produce a good. So our first factor is land. And this is going to be the physical land that you need for that good, but it also could be the natural resources used to create that good as well. So the raw materials are what you really look at with land. It could be wood, water, oil, coal, metal, rubber, whatever it might be. Okay. But it's also going to include the big surfaces that you need for putting a factory on or a parking lot or for growing crops. So if you think about land inputs for corn, a crop farm growing corn, well, you have the natural resource of the seeds. You may have fertilizers. You may have pesticides. Those all fit. You have all those different kinds of things that fit in the land itself, the farmland. So that would fit for that one. If you think about a factory like Quality One making wood cabinets, well, for the land, you're going to have the land the factory's on, not the factory, that'll fit with capital. We'll talk about that later, but the land the factory's on. You would have the wood that's needed for the factory for the cabinets. You'd have the metal that's used for the hinges. All those different kinds of things would fit. So land is going to be your natural resources and the land that something is on or grows from. Now, labor is simple. Labor is people, human work needed to accomplish something. And remember, we're talking about both goods and services here. So for goods, it could be the farmer producing the corn. For services, it could be a mechanic or a hairstylist that's providing a service for you. So think about labor inputs. What do you need for a hair salon? Well, you have the hairstylist. Maybe you have a receptionist. You may have a custodian. Anybody that's helping to make that happen. And then labor for making a car. Well, you have mechanics. You have engineers designing it. You have CEOs running the company. You have drivers transporting the cars. You have marketing people trying to sell the car. Tons of different people when you think about labor. Now, the third one is capital. So land had the natural resources. Capital has the expensive items you need to make a product. Okay, manufactured goods needed to produce a product or service. For a farmer, a tractor would fit as a capital good. They need that to produce what they need to. For a hairstylist, maybe like one of those blow dryers you put over your head, that kind of thing. So usually it's more expensive items, but they're manufactured goods that are needed for a product. In general, if we're making cars, the factory is a capital input. The assembly line and the robots would fit. School district, what are the manufactured goods that we need? Usually more expensive. Well, I can think of a few. Number one is technology, what I'm using right now. It costs a lot of money. You have your actual buildings, the schools, your bus garage, your buses themselves. You have the the field itself, I guess, would fit with land. But like the bleachers and everything for the fields, the furnaces that we use to heat everything, the air conditioning systems, all of that would fit with capital. Construction company, your trucks, maybe any lifts that you have, any expensive saws, trailers, any, if you have diggers or excavators or anything like that, they would all fit with capital too. So if it's something that's manufactured that costs a lot, it's probably going to fit with capital if you use it to produce something. The next one is entrepreneurship. This one's a little different because it's not always physical things. The ability of individuals to create a new business and the techniques that will produce products or services. And you have to have the ability to finance these operations as well. So a new restaurant in Ellsworth opens. What will be required of the owner to have success? Well, they need to understand the clientele. What do people in Ellsworth like to eat? Do they have certain hours that they like restaurants to be open? Are there certain drinks that they like to have more than others? Are there other menu items like desserts that they like? Whatever it might be. They need to know the locations that work the best. They need to understand sports teams possibly to know which teams to kind of focus on different days. all these different things in order to operate. And they also need to be able to run their own business financially. They need to market. They need to be able to hire good people. So entrepreneurship is really about how do you as an owner make a business run? And those are skills that are hard to teach sometimes. And lastly is technology. The use of science to create new methods or products for producing or distributing goods in a different way. So we're talking about technologies that shape how we make and receive goods. Okay. So you can think about the creation of the assembly line. That would be one. Okay. You can think about computer system operations that streamline who's buying what and where it's going, things like that. What are going to be some new things that'll happen in the next 20 years? Will we see that science will make it easier to distribute goods? Things like that, possibly. So that's technology. I think our last few notes here, we got 3 left. Okay. Production possibility curve. We'll talk about this a little bit. And this is when you're producing goods with all those inputs, how do you maximize the amount of output for 2 goods when there's a fixed input? So let's say that I can grow wheat or I can grow corn. Well, I got to figure out what's the best one to grow and how much of it should I grow if I want to have the most possible output. So let's say this example, you produce snowmobiles and dirt bikes. If you have a fixed income of money and factory space, you limit how much you can make. If you increase dirt bike production, you decrease snowmobile production. And so you have to decide which one am I going to make the most money off of, which one's going to be the most profitable for me. And so maybe we've had a few really bad winters where it's been pretty weak. There hasn't been much snow. So maybe you say, I'm going to focus on dirt bikes because more people are buying them because we just haven't had real good winters, right? Or the opposite. Maybe you've had great winters, so you produce more snowmobiles. Production possibility curves help you to understand how much you'll make at each different point and how that's going to help you out. So lastly is outputs. When you have all those inputs, you have outputs. These are the products or services created from inputs. So try to figure out what the output is based on these inputs. Glass, metal, plastic, and filament. That's a light bulb. Number 2, a wrench, a screwdriver, a manual, and a lift. Something about mechanic service. Wood, screws, cloth, and pins. I'm thinking about a chair. It could be a variety of things. And the last one is pretty easy. Scissors, clippers, blow dryer. We're talking about a hairstylist. So outputs, what do you produce with all those inputs in the end? And the last one is productivity. The amount of output, goods, and services created from a specific amount of input. All right. So you have this much of your goods or services, and how much can you produce from that? Okay. So for example, 2 teens have equal training at McDonald's. Do they prepare an order in the same speed? No. One's going to be more productive than another. We've seen that with teachers. You see that with farmers. You see that with business people. How much can you get out of a certain input, right? So companies are always trying to do better with that. Japan is a great company for productivity because they waste the least amount of material. And so a company is always trying to figure out how can I waste as little as possible to be more productive. So that can go for materials, but that can go for your workers too. How can they be more productive? So that's it. That's the intro. Yep. Next one's another unit. If you have any questions, let me know. Hopefully you got your notes filled in from that, and we will go from there. So you have a good day, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.